Your phone is face down on the desk, and you still check it like it might clear its throat and say something important. You know this move. The screen is dark. Nothing is happening. Your hand goes there anyway. Not because you need anything, because the thing is there, and that is already enough. The weird part is not that you look. The weird part is how automatic it feels. Like your day has a little doorbell and your fingers are trained to answer it. I did this last week while trying to answer one email. I unlocked the phone, saw nothing, locked it again, and felt oddly busy for a minute. That is the trick. It gives you the feeling of movement without the evidence. A lot of people think the phone steals attention by force. It is easier to blame the noise than the habit. But the truth is uglier and more ordinary. You trained your own hand to reach for the nearest spark, then acted surprised when the room got dim. Researchers at Asurion found that the average person checks their phone almost 100 times a day, roughly once every 10 minutes while awake. That is not an emergency, that is a routine. And once a routine starts wearing the clothes of necessity, it stops looking like a choice. One honest limitation, that number says what people check, not every single reason they check it. Still, 100 times a day means your attention is not being taken from you in a dramatic theft. It is being rented out in tiny leases. A glance before the kettle boils. A glance while the page is still loading. A glance in the middle of a thought, right where the thought was about to become useful. You do not feel the loss in the moment, because the loss is small enough to pass as nothing. A notification is not a siren. It is more like someone tapping the glass every few minutes while you are trying to read fine print. Not loud enough to stop the whole world, just loud enough to make the sentence in front of you wobble. One tap and the mind has to reassemble itself around the interruption. Researchers at the University of Texas, Austin, found that a smartphone on your desk reduces your ability to focus and think clearly, even when it is face down, silent, and switched off. That is the part people hate hearing, because it means the phone does not need to be active in your life. One honest limitation. This tells us about the effect of the phone's presence, not every possible room or task. And of course it does. Your brain does not sit there making a spreadsheet of risks. It notices the object, it keeps part of itself available. Like leaving a coat on the back of a chair at dinner and never fully settling into the meal. Nothing dramatic happens. You just stay a little less there than you could have been. That is the core rule. You did not get distracted. You built a room where the brightest thing is always a thumb's length away and called that a normal Tuesday. And once that room exists, your day begins to split into before and after every glance. Before you looked, the sentence had shape. After you looked, you're back at the top of the paragraph, pretending the top of the paragraph was where you meant to be. Is exhausting in a way that does not look dramatic enough to complain about. The first thing to notice is how often the phone becomes a blank check for delay. You tell yourself you are just checking one message, but the message is rarely the point. The point is the permission. The phone gives you a socially acceptable exit from the harder thing on the table. Put it in another room for the hour you need to think. Not because distance is magical, because distance makes the exit more expensive. That sounds small until you watch what happens when the exit gets easier than the task. A document stays half-finished because the second sentence felt heavy. An answer to a difficult text waits all afternoon because the phone offered a more interesting way to spend 2 minutes, and then 12, and then the whole mood of the day. Cost is not just lost time, it is the shape of your work. A half-written email gets sent with missing context and creates a second thread. A simple bill gets missed and becomes a late fee that was never supposed to exist. A call from someone you meant to ring back sits there long enough to become awkward, then urgent, then avoidable, in a new and more expensive way. This is why the phone on the desk matters even when it stays quiet. It does not need to ring to stay in the conversation. It just needs to be there, like a spare key on the table that you keep touching to make sure it still exists. So move it, not to punish yourself, to stop treating access as neutral. A phone in a bag is not a moral victory. It is one less invitation sitting in front of your face. What makes this so hard is that the interruptions feel tiny enough to dismiss, tiny enough to pretend they do not have a cost. But Gloria Mark at UC Irvine found that a single notification costs an average of 23 minutes of lost focus before full attention is restored. 23 minutes, not 23 seconds of annoyance. 23 minutes before the mind is fully back where it was. That changes the meaning of the little buzz. It is no longer a pebble. It is a crack in the floor. One moment you're in your task. The next, you are not in it. And your brain has to spend the next stretch rebuilding what looked effortless from the outside. Human cost shows up in the parts of life that never get their own dramatic montage. You reread the same paragraph 4 times. You open the wrong tab and forget why. You sit down to do one useful thing and stand up an hour later, having mostly managed your own interruptions. The day ends with more movement than progress, and somehow that still counts as being busy. A kitchen timer can be kinder than your phone. An object that only counts down. No messages hiding inside it. No little red badge waiting to be interpreted like a secret. The reason that helps is not complicated. You do not need more self-respect. You need fewer places where your attention is allowed to bleed out in private. Every extra notification is asking your mind to start over. And starting over is where the day disappears without ever looking stolen. Think about how ridiculous that is. You would never invite someone to tap your shoulder every few minutes while you were trying to sign a contract or carry a full cup across a room. But for some reason, we hand the same job to a device and act as if the interruptions are part of the furniture. And then we keep the phone within reach anyway, because reach feels harmless. A bottle of water on the desk does not demand anything from you. A phone does, even when it stays quiet. That is why the hand reaches before the thought finishes. The hand is already answering a question the mind did not mean to ask. The real damage is not that you look. It is that your attention learns to distrust itself. You start expecting to be interrupted, so you stop going as deep. You keep your thoughts shallow enough to escape quickly, because the room has taught you that nothing stays private for long. That is when people begin to think they have a concentration problem. They do not. They have a permission problem. The day keeps handing them exits, and they keep taking them because exiting feels easier than resisting the next bright thing. Put the phone on charge somewhere inconvenient, not across the house as a performance, just somewhere that asks for effort. Effort is useful. Effort slows the reflex down enough for the choice to appear. You can feel the difference the first time you try to work without the device on the desk. The silence does not fix everything, it just stops making promises. And once the promises stop, the mind has less to negotiate with. Still, the habit returns because it is attached to relief. The little check breaks tension. It gives you a tiny hit of something new when the task in front of you is ordinary and dull and difficult. That is why the pattern survives. It is not just about information. It is about escape from friction. That is also why so many people defend the habit so fiercely. They are not defending the phone. They are defending the momentary release it offers from their own discomfort. If you have ever reached for it while waiting for a response you did not want to think about, you already know how personal that is. And the more often you use it for relief, the more often your brain asks for relief. A loop like that does not announce itself. It just quietly becomes the shape of your day. So, give the day a different shape. Leave the phone out of arm's reach during the first stretch of work. Not forever. Long enough to prove to yourself that your attention can survive being left alone with a sentence. The irony is that people often describe this as getting more done, but the deeper change is smaller and more human than productivity. It is the return of full contact with one thing at a time. The email is just an email. The conversation is just a conversation. The page is just a page instead of a warm-up act for the next buzz. And when that happens, you notice how much of your tiredness was not from the work itself. It was from the switches, the constant internal turning. Task, phone, task, phone, task, phone. A dozen small resets dressed up as normal life. A notebook does not do that. It waits. A paper book does not suddenly become social. A locked phone with nothing happening on it still has the power to pull your eyes like a magnet on a fridge door, which is exactly why leaving it there matters so much. You can tell how deep the habit runs by how often you touch the phone without remembering the decision to do it. The body moves first. The mind comes in afterward with a story. It's checking, just in case, just for a second. It sounds innocent because it is small. Small is how it wins. That is the quiet humiliation of it. Not that you are weak, that you keep giving away expensive pieces of attention for free and then calling the bill unexpected. So the answer is not a grand vow. It is a different arrangement. A phone that is not on the desk. Notifications that are not constantly allowed to interrupt. A space where your mind is not always one tap away from being pulled sideways. Once you see that, it is hard to unsee the daily bargain you have been making. You sit down to do one thing, and the brightest object in the room asks to be chosen over and over again. Choice is tiny each time. That is how it keeps its innocence. And then, at the end of the day, the same hand reaches for the same screen on the desk, and nothing on it has changed.